Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
I didn't mean to have another burn this episode so soon, but sometimes you just got a lot of crap to burn.
A lot of stuff to burn. And this one, I've had to learn the hard way myself. So I sympathize with this one. But before we get into that topic, we want to remind you that we are in a coaching enrollment period. We're taking on probably around 15 new clients.
If it's any more than that, I might protest and tell you I quit this business.
We do have a limit, is what that means. Our calendars do get full.
Yes.
Which means at some point we may have to shut it down, but we will let you know that at this point, we're recording this in advance. We think it's going to be fine.
I mean, if you reach out and I can't,
we'll let you know.
And I don't have capacity, I'm just telling you, you're going to be on the wait list for a while. So it does behoove people to take action sooner rather than later if they want to.
Yes. So we're taking on 15-ish, 20 people. We'll just see how it shakes out. Again, this is for people interested in getting started in the next month or so. If you're looking to get started later in the year, that's fine. Don't join the wait list, or just wait
till October when we'll probably be doing this again.
When it's closer to the time. And we are recognizing, I'm talking to a lot of people. I'm doing a lot of those single sessions that we
during our pandemic
promo. By the way, if you're a single session person and you want more coaching, you get a little bit of a discount.
You can apply what you've paid toward coaching, which is cool.
But I'm just recognizing how much this year has shaken up things for a lot of people.
Oh, just a little bit. Just a little smidgen.
It's one thing to know it, to be like, oh yeah, but then when you hear people's stories, I've heard so many different stories about how some people are really actually kind of thriving in their career and in their lives right now. Some people are in a complete gigantic question mark in their whole lives and everything in between. So
some are careening downward in a spiral that won't quit.
You talking about yourself or others?
I plead the fifth on that one.
So we just recognize this year in particular might be one that is really helpful to get some coaching in. I mean, a lot of stuff is coming up.
First of all, there's never a time when coaching isn't relevant. But it's even more relevant usually in a time where things are rising to the surface because you've had to look at your stuff in a way that you wouldn't have had to look at it had life just continued on normally.
2020 is the year of looking at your stuff. Whether you wanted it to be or not.
A lot of it's gross stuff. Yeah. I like looking at gross stuff, though, so that's what we're here for. So, okay.
Deadline for that is Tuesday, the 30th.
So only a few more days. Tuesday, that's it, the 30th. So fill out a form if you want to talk to us seriously. Like if you want to seriously talk to us about it. You don't have to be 100% bought into the idea yet, but you have to be serious enough that you're going to talk to us and it not be a complete waste of any of our time, just to be frank. So the form is in the show notes, or you can go to clarityonfire.com, head over to the Work With Us tab, and you can check out the one-on-one coaching page there. There's two options. We do 2 months of coaching or 5 months of coaching. 2 months equals 6 sessions. 5 months equals 12. And to be honest, 5 months is maybe a sort of underestimate of how long I'll work with someone when it's 12 sessions. I often find that it goes 6 months or sometimes longer. It just depends. So the reason that we end up working with people for more than double, sometimes maybe 3 times the length of time when they do 5 months versus when they do 2, is because when we do 2, we really talk to them on a pretty consistent, very weekly basis, because we find that momentum works to talk to you that to that regularly. It's like going to the gym. You got to have consistency and momentum to build muscle. Whereas when we get to when we have more time with someone, what happens is toward the midway point in coaching, it gets spread out. And so it becomes less about the internal exploration and more about the application and the taking action. It goes from inner to outer. And at that point, we need more time. We need more time for you to go experiment out in the world and try things and report back. And so it can be 2 or 3 weeks in between sometimes us talking, which is good. I think it really, really extends coaching. And of course, we're still checking in. We're still emailing in between. So it becomes a much more hearty experience when you do it for longer.
It's the full life cycle of the coaching process. The first half of it is that. Rachel and I don't put people into a bunch of action right at the beginning of coaching because you don't know what you want or why you want it, or if it really aligns.
You might not be right about that.
You might not be right. We need to seriously examine, find your true north, and figure out how to get yourself out of the limitations you've been putting on yourself now, move you in the right direction, and then we can start taking action. But that takes a little while. So the first half of coaching is more internal and it's more intensive in that regard.
I have a client right now who has been for years trying to figure out what she wants to do and is very frustrated that she's tried a lot of things and none of it seems to have moved the needle. And when I asked her, what do you like and what do you don't like about your job? She couldn't really articulate it. She knew that she wasn't happy with where she is, but she can't articulate why. So I said, there's literally no point in you taking any more action until we can articulate what is aligned for you and what's not aligned for you. Because that's going to be your guidance system from here on out. And there's a lot of reasons why someone isn't able to experience alignment, why they maybe can't even articulate what they're attracted to and what they're not attracted to. A lot of fears, a lot of beliefs, a lot of family programming, a lot of gunk. And so we got to power wash that gunk away so that we can actually figure out, well, what is not the right thing for you, but the thing that feels like alignment. And then we can match outer action to what alignment feels like.
Yes, but
that's a later phase.
It's a later phase. And I know people want to jump right into a bunch of action.
But again, she's been doing that for years and it's not working because you didn't do the inner work first.
Most people have had that experience of getting frustrated, just taking action from a reactive place.
So random.
And not taking that pause to redirect and again, find that true north before getting back into action.
It's trying to get out of a room as big of a football field with a blindfold on. Mm-hmm. With lots of obstacles in the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what taking action with no inner guidance looks like. Mm-hmm. It looks sad and frustrating.
And awkward.
For everybody. So, okay. Check out, if you're serious about it, we're serious enough to talk about it with you. So go fill out a form and we'll be here to chat with you about it, at least until the 30th, in which case you got to then get on the wait list or you got to wait until October. So, all right, I was going to say side chat, and it's not actually a side chat. Sort of, in my mind, the difference between a side chat and a burn this is that burn this has a little bit more of a no more energy about it. Like,
we're cutting you off.
We're cutting you off. I don't like it, and I won't stand for it. So let me start by telling you a story, because I literally had this coaching conversation yesterday. It's very fresh in my mind. I have a client who Kristen can relate to a lot because she is a type 9 on the Enneagram. Mm-hmm. So she, by her own admission, has been having some difficulties working up the courage to quit her part-time job. She knows it's not what she wants. She knows it's not aligned. We've done a lot of work on that. She's clear. She's just really scared because confrontation feels hard for her and she's very afraid of disappointing her coworkers, understandably. So she's avoiding so she's just not doing it. She's, by her own admission, avoiding it. Mm-hmm. And so what we ended up talking about was, hey, you're a type 9. So that means you have a default to dislike difficult emotions like anger.
Everyone does, but 9s do on a grand. Nobody likes feeling.
I don't dislike anger that much, but
feeling sad But
what I'm saying is, her propensity, given her wiring, is that she shies away from rocking the boat. It's natural for her to feel guilty it's natural for her to really shy away from anger or anything that smells of conflict or confrontation. So I said, it's kind of like, how she's getting married soon? You know how when you're registering for wedding gifts, like in sort of the in-person experience, you have that little registry gun and you have you just scan it?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you've gone through a warehouse of emotions and experiences and you've said conflict, bad. Anger, bad. Rocking the boat, bad, bad, bad. Mm-hmm. And you've just scanned all of these and you've assigned a value to all of them. Bad, 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 bad. And because it's bad, because you've labeled it bad, you don't want to engage with it. And not only that, you don't want other people to engage with it. So you're assuming that you quitting is going to equal bad to your boss. Your boss might have a totally different relationship to this than you, but because in your mind it feels bad, you don't want your boss to have to go through it either.
And the reason that this is such a problem is that really overgeneralization is never a good idea.
No.
Whenever you look at, for example, confrontation and say, bad, always bad, 100% bad, never, ever, ever good.
Because it makes me uncomfortable
Sure.
and I don't like it.
Right. We could replace this with sadness, with
Sure.
anger,
Sure.
with worry, with fear, any of these emotions.
Weakness.
That, that often get this label on it of bad, to be avoided,
Yeah.
or to be squashed away and pushed aside.
Yeah.
Then every single time they come up, you're going to have that reaction because now you have programmed yourself to think this equals bad 100% of the time.
You're on autopilot now.
Yep.
You don't even have a choice about how to respond now because you have labeled everything. And from here on out, you are going to go with what you've labeled.
And labels are never
actually helpful.
Never helpful all the time. There are always exceptions. There are always strange instances.
Well, stoplights are helpful. Those are labels of how to behave.
Sure.
They keep us safe. I would prefer to have them than not have them, right?
Sure. Yes.
But in terms of, that's a tangible, real world, physical object type situation. Emotions don't fit clearly into those green, yellow, red categories.
And I want to give some examples of this because there are, for example, if you are in a situation that, okay, let's just give this a situation that we're all experiencing right now with this pandemic. There's a lot of uncertainty. It is a natural reaction to uncertainty. If you are furloughed from your job and you don't know where money is going to come from for a little while, having some anxiety is not like, oh no, this is such a bad thing. This is a normal, natural human reaction.
Makes sense.
That is showing up to say, hey, maybe let's look at this. Maybe let's come up with a plan B. Let's try to, it's there as a protective mechanism. It's there as a motivator, and it's there trying to give you some valuable information.
If your grandma dies and you're experiencing grief, does grief equal bad or wrong?
Grief is the most appropriate response in that situation. In fact, I might argue that if we're saying what's a quote unquote bad reaction, if you're trying to not feel grief about something that is really worthy of grief and trying to plaster on happiness when that's not at all how you're feeling, that's called spiritual bypassing.
Happiness equals bad in that situation.
Exactly.
Yes.
There is no such thing as these emotions are always good, these emotions are always bad. Okay, another example. Here, this is for my type 9s who really dislike frustration and anger and that kind of conflict type feeling. I was just talking to a single session client yesterday who was trying to recognize her boundaries. And we realized one of the biggest ways to determine when a boundary has been crossed is you feel anger or resentment or frustration. And that's a helpful cue in that moment.
It's not just for her. Anger is the natural reaction to a boundary being violated.
Or a value being crossed. Right?
Yep.
That means, I didn't like that. I'm not okay
that
with that.
Doesn't meet my needs, and it might actually invade my space.
And maybe I need to speak up about that. Or maybe I need to be more clear. Or maybe I need to have a consequence for that boundary being crossed.
Anger's excellent in that situation.
It's a very valuable tool in that instance.
So I told my client, visually, I need you to picture going through that warehouse and removing every label you've slapped on every emotion in every situation. And this warehouse is pure. It gets to stay label free.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem and the challenge and the good thing, it's all wrapped up in one, is that you now have to, in every situation, determine whether anger is appropriate or toxic, whether, anxiety is totally warranted or completely off base. You do not get to just set it and forget it when it comes to how you feel about emotions. And if you're feeling uncomfortable about a particular emotion, is that because it's wrong? Or is that because it's challenging you? Because it might be going against some of your core wiring. And is that actually a call to growth? Is that a call? Is you're experiencing anger a bad thing, or is it a call to growth?
Mm-hmm.
Because often, and this ties in so well with the Enneagram types, depending on the emotion that you're experiencing, it's very likely going to be a call to growth. For a type 9 to be experiencing anger is actually awesome because they tend to deny their anger. So in that way, anger can be a real growth edge. Getting mad can be growth edge for a type 9.
I can raise my hand and say that has been a huge growth edge for me. And becoming someone who is comfortable with feeling anger and expressing anger has recognizing my Enneagram type makes me want to avoid this at all costs.
Yeah.
And so this is where my growth edge is. And this is...
I might need to lean in.
I have in the past several years. And I've had to...
I would like to see you lean more into getting mad about things. I just want to see it more.
Well, I spoke up to quite a authority figure in a way that I really expressed some anger in a way that a past version of myself would be mortified.
I didn't get to see it, though.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could have recorded
about it later. Yeah, but there was a bit of righteousness there. Well, what if you're a type 8? One of the type 8's feelings they have that they're the most uncomfortable with is vulnerability and weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So is weakness a bad thing, or are you just uncomfortable with it?
Yep. Maybe vulnerability is your growth edge.
It probably, no, it definitely is if you're a type 8. Should we go through? I feel like we should go through the Enneagram types and just say like
so we're doing it backward. We've done 9.
You want to do backward?
8. Yeah, we'll do 7 now.
Okay, 7s. You might be uncomfortable with your own sadness and frustration. So I see 7s most often spiritually bypassing. They're very, very likely to be like, no, but let's just focus on the positive and let's just focus on the silver lining.
Pessimism or negativity
or sadness. Is negativity a bad thing? Or are you just uncomfortable with it?
Yep.
Is there something that negativity or that sadness or that frustration might need to teach you?
Mm-hmm. Is there a message? Is there any kind of value in looking at it from a different perspective and not just glossing over?
Mm-hmm. So, type 6s. So
they're very uncomfortable. Well, I would actually say anxiety is almost a comfort.
They're very uncomfortable with change.
Yeah, that's true.
Really security and stability oriented. So is risk taking bad, or are you just uncomfortable with it?
Is uncertainty bad, or is uncertainty maybe room for adventure and growth?
I would say
change and newness.
Right? An opportunity to learn how to be faithful and to trust that things are working out for you without needing to know what's going to happen next. Is that bad, or is that just your growth edge?
Uh-huh.
Okay, wow. So for a type 5, very up in their head, can be super analytical, very intellectualizing their problems as opposed to getting out into the world and shaking things up and doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So is taking action a bad thing, or are you just uncomfortable with taking action? Is not having all the answers wrong?
I think,
or is it okay to look dumb sometimes? Right? Is looking dumb sometimes your growth edge as a type 5? Oops.
Yeah.
Might be.
Ooh, want to talk about type 4s? I know you're familiar with this one.
God. Okay. So, type 4s, we're very dramatic. We really like intensity. We tend to marinate in our own fantasies and our own little worlds. And that can be good, but that can also be really detrimental because we'll sort of kind of almost prolong an emotional experience that doesn't need to be prolonged. We'll drag it out way further than it deserves to be dragged out. So I might say, as a type 4, is your desire or is your attraction to intensity good? Or do you maybe need to find balance?
Mm-hmm. And what are type 4s afraid of feeling?
Well, they don't like feeling sameness. They don't like feeling like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So we tend to think that we are very different and unique and super special, which we are, but we're not.
So maybe belonging is not such a bad thing.
Right. Is being run of the mill really that bad, or are you just uncomfortable with being normal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I think type 3s are afraid of failure.
Super afraid of failure. Looking, like they're not achieving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So is being an underachiever bad, or are you just uncomfortable with it?
Yeah. Is failing bad, or is failing sometimes exactly what is needed in that moment?
Yeah.
To help you lean into your growth edge.
Right.
And learn about yourself. Right.
Is feeling out of your element bad, or is that maybe just really good for you to feel out of your element? And these are, we're going through emotions here, but it's more than just emotions. We're really talking about states of being too. And emotions
that we're afraid of or that we're uncomfortable with. Choose loneliness.
Yeah. They're
so afraid of loneliness.
So, right. They define so much of their identity in relation to how they can serve other people. And so is loneliness a bad thing, or are you just not comfortable with being alone?
Mm-hmm. But maybe could that be your growth edge?
Yes. Could being alone be something that's really good for you? And then for type 1, I have a lot of type 1, your classic perfectionism, very, very, very righteous, very concerned with doing the right thing. So is doing everything right actually correct? Or is that potentially harming you?
Mm-hmm.
Is your perfectionism really admirable, or is it actually stealing something from you?
Is just going with the flow and not like having kind of...
For idiots? Or is it maybe your growth edge?
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't mean to make this into an Enneagram episode, but I kind of love that we did, because I see so many parallels between the things that we reject, and the things that we label.
Ourselves and others, again.
Yes, the things we reject in ourselves, the things we label in ourselves, and the things we reject and label in other people. And your Enneagram type. There's just such a parallel between
I would say the things we reject in ourselves and others, and often also the things we try to protect ourselves and others from that maybe we don't need protecting from because it's not a bad thing.
Not only that, the things we praise in ourselves and other people, A type 8 often is praising strength in other people because they're prone to value strength and devalue vulnerability. Mm-hmm. So again, are you praising yourself for other people because it's real and valid? Or is it because you're just comfortable with that and that's what you know? And so, this episode became about way more than just not labeling your emotions. It becomes about not labeling yourself or anything, really, which is funny because then we're talking about Enneagrams, which are also labels. But I think the point why I like the Enneagram so much is that it's meant to help you break free of the label.
Yes. Yeah.
It's meant to help you live a more well-rounded life and not put you in a
static
box.
Thing that says you're just this way. Sorry about it. It's supposed to help you find that growth edge and expand into other ways of seeing yourself and others.
Yeah, it's a guide to help you get out of the box that you've painted yourself into or that you've labeled yourself into.
So one really helpful way of starting to move out of this is instead of looking at your emotions from a place of judgment, because judgment means I decree this as good or bad. Mm-hmm. Instead, observing your emotional reactions and others with just curiosity.
Right.
That's such a powerful mental shift where when you get curious about it, if you're like, oh, well, why am I feeling anxious right now? Oh, well, maybe because everything in my life is super uncertain. Or why am I feeling sad right now? Well, something sad just happened, or just watched a sad movie. I'm just feeling very natural sadness. Your curiosity can lead you to answers that explain it and make you feel like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Or your curiosity might say, you know what? I did just go down an anxiety spiral. And anxiety is not always bad, but right now it's not super helpful. So I'm going to choose to do something different and move out of that. But you're not instantaneously judging it. You're getting curious about it. You're asking questions. You're saying, is this appropriate? Is this helpful? Does this make sense? Do I need to be going down this route or not? Is there growth potential here?
Being in an observer mindset is being like an anthropologist doing, or, a science experiment. It's the scientist studying the monkey. If the scientist is judgmental, it goes, bad monkey. Don't like what you're doing. If it's just an observer, it goes, oh, that's an interesting thing that monkey is doing.
I wonder why that monkey is doing that.
I wonder what it means.
I'm going to look more into that.
If I need to actually, is that like really
I bet that
relevant?
Makes sense if I go back and explore why the monkey's doing that.
Right. There's no value judgment assigned to it. It's just curiosity. And it's okay, in any given context, there might be a really good reason or not for why that monkey does that thing. And we are nothing if not monkeys, all of us.
So yeah, imagine yourself as both the monkey in the observation room and also the scientist on the other side looking in the observation room, asking all the questions about that monkey. You can be both in this scenario.
We use so many visual. I feel like our podcast is nothing if not just a random assortment of analogies and visuals.
If you haven't figured out that's how our brains work by now, then I don't know what you're listening to.
Probably why you listen. It's because your brain tends to work.
It is
in
how
a
my brain works.
Fashion.
It's just visual, and it's all the analogies all the time, usually mixed up. Sometimes they don't even make sense together, but they make sense in our brains. So hopefully all of these many visuals help you be able to look at this a little bit differently and give yourself a little bit more permission to feel however you're feeling.
Yeah. There's no such thing, again, as a good or a bad or a right or a wrong feeling.
Nope.
Everything makes sense based on either what's going on in your world or how you're wired. Now, that doesn't mean we have to accept it. It just means that it makes sense. And we can then move forward and question how we want to behave and show up moving forward. So, no such thing as labeling your emotions anymore. You have to choose in every moment how you're going to proceed.
Yep. And sometimes, quote unquote, bad emotions are the most appropriate in that scenario. It's all contextual.
This has officially been burnt.
We need a little sizzling sound or something.
I'm not going to ask Dave, our producer, to put that in. I don't feel like he needs to bother with that.
We're not that fancy.
Okay. So what is it? Today's Friday.
Today's Friday.
We'll be back on Tuesday with
a Magic 8 Ball.
I think it's a Magic 8 Ball, and that will again be our last day of coaching enrollment.
Yep. So we will talk to some of you about coaching in the coming days. And the rest of you, we will see on Tuesday.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.